The idea of being gaslit into having this to prove that police brutality exists, like the amount of mental energy that takes. Stop trying to make us justify when something is wrong, or trying to justify when something is racist. Alright, what's up, y'all? My name is Tay, and today I'm going to be talking about what's been going on through my mind the past week. So today is Wednesday, June 3rd, and George Floyd died last Monday, May 25th. I think that 8 or 9 days, something like that. It's been over a week, and protests are on its 8th or 9th day. So there's a lot that's been going on. On top of that, it's a global pandemic, which I kind of forgot about. Like, I forgot Corona was going on because of all this other stuff. And there's just a lot being brought to light that, and I feel like I'm truly understanding like what racism is. In college, I got my certificate in African American Studies, which is like a minor, and I studied psychology as my major. So I knew like things about racism, but I had always had this hope or this feeling that if enough information was present, then you wouldn't need to try and like prove something is racist, whether it be to like a small degree or a longer degree. Like with this, it's just evident racism. There's no, oh well this or oh well that, but apparently there are a lot of people that are still like, oh well, it could have been from other underlying conditions that killed him, and therefore the knee on the neck wasn't a big deal, and all this stuff. And I'm like, that don't even make sense. So, racism. And I feel it would be different if some people were just like, oh yeah, like they were racist to a point where they were like, oh yeah, he like deserved to die or something like that because he was black or something like that. Saying like horrible stuff, but still just saying like what it is, and they felt that because it was racism and they're like applauding the racism. But there are people who are saying that it's not being racist to say that it's not what it is, if that makes sense. And so I wrote a couple notes down. For the main point, or the first point I want to talk about, is this concept of gaslighting. So, gaslighting, let me read the technical definition. So, gaslighting is manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own reality, or sanity. It says sanity on here, but I say reality. So, making someone feel like what they see, what they witnessed, or what they're feeling is not valid in terms of like sanity though. So with this, how that relates to this in this specific sense, I'll say, is you can see like the evident things that are wrong, that have gone wrong with the main cop and the surrounding cops that allowed it to happen. And it wouldn't seem like you would need to question their intentions to at least just say that that was wrong. And in general, with the black community, a very large reason that all this heartache has been on us, not just like the day we were born, but it becomes ingrained in us when we're living, especially if you live in that low income place. I didn't live like low income. I would say like upper low income. We're definitely not middle class, but we're not uncomfortable as well. So just the things that you witness, and then hearing people try and invalidate your own experience that they haven't lived, and with the whole, oh, if you just work hard, you can make it out of that situation. Or, oh, if your parents had a job and everything, or had a like better job, then everything would be different. So then like just putting the blame in different places instead of just calling stuff like it is. And I know with me, like the idea of being gaslit into having this to prove that police brutality exists, like the amount of mental energy that takes. And because we are not the ones that are in power, it's this constant effort of trying to prove that there's something that's wrong. And it should not have taken until a white man put his neck on a black man for 9 minutes till he became unconscious and died. Shouldn't have taken that for us to realize that racism still exists. And systematic racism is a thing. I don't know, like, you could change up the term. It just means that racism is in our institutions. For this specific one, we're talking about the police institution. I mean, that honestly goes as far as the court system as well, the whole system of law. The thing that's gonna get the person arrested or ends up killing them, brings them to court, and gets them sentenced to the prison system. So it's just like so undeniable, is what one of my professors would say. And we tend to get this feeling of, are we even worth it, or should we even have to keep it explaining it if no one is going to listen? And part of it is like, all we want, like not all we want, but one step in this is just acknowledging that something is wrong to begin with. And that's like, if you can't do that, then I'm just like, how can you make any progress? So say that this stuff is happening and people are just focusing on, oh, well, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of people looting, there's a lot of people tearing down places. And if that is your only focus or your main focus for this whole situation, and you can't sit back and say, well, why is that happening? So I'm not trying to praise the violence or the looting and stuff, but it's like, if that's like your main focus and you're choosing to ignore, I think that's the thing I'm mainly trying to hit. Like, in order to be gaslighting the black community in this way, you have to be choosing to ignore facts. And it's just like so tragic. So stop trying to make us justify when something is wrong, or trying to justify when something is racist, because that is creating like this, I feel it's like vastly contributing to these health conditions that are disproportionately affecting black communities. All the heart diseases, hypertension, high blood pressure, cholesterol, all these things disproportionately affect the black community. And when you look up how things regarding your mental health affect you physically, from a biology, a psychological, and a social model, all these things are going to affect how we deal and experience stress. And I was just really thinking about it and talking to my friend about it, and I'm like, this idea of gaslighting, having to prove that racism exists while we're still experiencing racism, is absolutely just ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous, and it creates this heartache on us that becomes transgenerational, gets taught to the kids, and that's why I was kind of saying it's something that's kind of like in us from birth. Like, are we gonna have to prove that we're worth something? Or we're gonna have to prove that we've been wronged? Especially, like, people think things can't be racist unless they're overt, unless someone is going up to you calling you the N-word. People don't think only think lynchings are someone hanging someone from a platform in a public space and then people allowing it. Like, no, a lynching is literally a public form of embarrassment, humiliation, and death, from what I understand. So killing someone for an alleged offense without a legal trial. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be hanging, but when you look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, they really there's a video of white men chasing down this black guy and then killing him in broad daylight with their weapons. And they used to be the older guy used to be in the police force or something. So charges were not brought for 2 months until pressure was put on them to look into this case. And that just don't make no damn sense, bro. So yes, I feel there's something I wrote in this poem that it's called The Talk. And I said that you cannot say that we talk about slavery too much if it's never been an honest conversation to begin with. And racism is not an honest conversation in the United States. However, it is so prevalent in every sense of the word. And I've really just been sitting back and I'm just like, the resident he really got elected. He really got elected. And the stuff he's saying right now is just like complete disregard, very tyrannical. And he doesn't care. Like, that's another thing. With you denying facts, like, you really have to just not care about other people. I have just got a new understanding of what, like, racism is. Like, I thought I knew it I knew what racism is, but seeing, like, the different ways that it's being manifested, I really, like, sat and tried to understand it so I won't be, like, so confused when I'm talking about it. So, to kind of go on from this, I had a poem or spoken word that I wrote called The Talk. And it's called The Talk with, quotes, because there's like the talk, the birds and the bees, and you start talking to your kids about sexual activity and stuff like that. But there's a specific talk that kids are given in the Black community about racism, what they're going to experience, what you need to look out for, how to be cautious, all that good stuff. And it's me talking to my little sister and telling her all the stuff that she's gonna have to eventually face and how she can overcome it. Just to give a brief overview of it, I'm kind of singing the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. This is one of my little sisters, she's like 19 months old, favorite songs. Like, she will randomly just be like, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And it's like the cutest thing. And it's like, if so a lot of nursery rhymes have racist origin, but they've been like reworded and stuff so it would be appropriate for children. And I was just kind of thinking of the idea of having a nursery rhyme and reframing it in a way to explain racism to a child. It's not what I'm actually doing in the poem, but that's the concept that I was kind of motivated off of. So I have like a verse that's just about mindset. So from the head, shoulders, it's kind of more so talking about cops carelessly shooting unarmed Black people. And then I have something about knees, so that's more focused on Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. And then the officer that took a knee on George Floyd's neck. And then there's the toes, so being able to, the toes, at the bottom on your feet, and you're being able to stand up, for what you feel is right. And then we have the eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, which is a shorter part in the actual, nursery rhyme. And I kind of condensed that into this eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and it's like kind of repeated in different forms to show how you can speak up because they're going to try and shut you down. So my favorite line in here is, see the history that you're ignoring. I don't understand the fight when it's the same reason for the color of my biggest organ as a light skin. They pirated our bodies. They buried us with no caskets and now tell us being here is a treasure. They stole us from Africa, brought us here, killed us en masse, and we are, as far as I'm concerned, all of America's ground is a grave. And tell us being here is a treasure. So the idea of burying us and tell us being, like, you need to be grateful that you're here in the first place because of all the turmoil that might be going on in other countries. And yeah, so there's nothing to really like complain about since we're here and stuff like that. It's not as bad as we make it seem. And that could be a whole like conversation for, it could be a whole different conversation for Native Americans. Native Americans, I'm pretty sure, are like less than 2 or less than 1% of the population. And that massacre, that's a whole other thing. So I'm gonna just talk about this for now. But yeah, that just ties into this idea of being gaslit. There's opportunity everywhere. You should just be grateful for that. You should be grateful. They're really making us feel like we should be grateful that the Civil Rights Act was put in place so we can have rights when that should have been a given in the first place. And then wonder why we don't want to give oath or something. And then wonder why we don't want to pledge allegiance to a song that was never meant for us in the first place. So, yes, this idea of being gaslit has just really been on my mind. Proving that racism exists and proving that a racist action or thing was said this creates a lot of heartache. And to a point where you don't even want to prove it anymore. And you're just like, oh, they're just racist. Or they're just ignorant, so let me let it slide. But that experience still happens to you, and it still sticks with you. I think the last thing I wanted to talk about, so I've talked about like acknowledging that this stuff is happening. And one other thing that I've just realized is, solidarity of the cops. And just wanting to know that they give a damn about the system, that they're in. This is the system that has been, or one of the greatest systems that has been oppressing Black people. The cops, or the police, was literally created for mass control over African Americans after the Emancipation Proclamation. Got all these free slaves, how are we going to keep them in order? And racism or slavery just manifested itself in a different way. And that is still is still affecting us to this day. So, yes, the idea of cops showing solidarity and showing that they know that the system is racist is playing a part in our mindset, because we've been gaslit and told that, oh, it's not that bad, or oh, that's just how the system works. My grandma kept saying stuff about how she feels for the cops that have to deal with the violence that's going on, and they're putting their lives can be in danger. A lot of cops have died, unfortunately, and it's not getting talked about as much. I feel the idea of it being the focus, though, I think I put on Fox News for a sec, and they were just naming out the information about cops and not the other protesters that have died. I'm you can't do one. That just didn't make sense to me. If you're gonna talk about one and just completely ignore the other, that doesn't make any sense to me. So, yes. But with the idea of the cops, being out there having to control this violence, something as simple as showing solidarity can affect how the people are interacting. Because all we want to do is be acknowledged that our points are valid and that our experiences are valid. I cannot support that they support a system that is doing this. And it's people are recognizing it across the globe. There are literally protests going on, I think Australia, different countries in Africa, Toronto. The Canadian Prime Minister, that Justin Trudeau, he is literally out here yeah, what y'all doing? That's fucked up. He's literally being very open and honest with it, but the resident, I'm not gonna call him the other name, but the resident of the White House can't even acknowledge it. Acknowledgement can do so much. Something that I saw Kai Foster saying was why are we, I don't remember exactly how she said it, but she compared it to applauding fish for swimming. It's something that they already should have been doing in the first place. But in my mind, it's the idea that it doesn't happen at all. And when I do see it now, it's I'm seeing some type of progress. And I saw this video of this one cop who actually took a knee, and his cops that were around him yanked him up. And statistically, say before this stuff happened, if an African American was to not call out their superior, but it's more so if an African American officer was to report or say something about how their counterpart did something wrong, they would be more likely to be sanctioned, fired, and all that stuff. So there are people who want to speak up but can't. But I'm right now, if you're not saying anything, if you're just, oh, I'm taking orders, that I'm just taking orders stuff, that's not enough. There are much bigger issues going on than yourselves. Much bigger issues going on than just myself. This issue isn't just about George Floyd. It's about Breonna Young, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin was the first case I really started to understand. Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, and countless other names that have been overlooked. Eric Garner. I know when we literally have had this not exact same thing, but a very similar thing happen. And I feel as a Black community, we feel we let that go, or we let that slide because no change was enforced. And we have been constantly becoming numb to the situation. And yeah, it's just we're not standing for this no more. And the whole world sees it. So how are you going to say that how are you still gonna say that what we're thinking is too much or invalid? That doesn't make sense. So this gaslighting, like, y'all just look stupid now. And that's all I gotta say. Thank you for listening to me. If you stayed through the entire video, I hope I made some valid points. Well, I know I made some valid points, but I hope they resonated with you in some type of way. Please feel free to add some more information. I'd love to have a conversation about it in some type of way. But yeah, those are the main thoughts I've had over the past week about everything that's been going on. I feel this is very good for my mental health because I've been very overwhelmed to a point of becoming like just really emotional. I cried for the first time on Sunday. I have been able to go to one of the protests, which felt good. And yes, next steps. How are we going to make change? But I feel before you do that, you have to understand what you're thinking yourself. So I encourage you, if you haven't had conversations with people, to go and have conversations with people. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. And I hope you have a great day.